Well, very good. I'm going to make this relatively short here, but I'm going to start with the generation side. So Nebraska City 1, Nebraska City 2 obviously had relatively high capacity factors. Why that's really important is that from our equipment availability, reliability strategic directive, we actually met that for 2016. Even with some of the forced and planned and even some extended outages that we had that we essentially extended because of a relatively weak market during the time that we had those outages. The other item I think is relatively important that I know the board is interested in, the new Nebraska City 2 turbine, both high pressure, intermediate rotor has been manufactured and is going to be making its way to Nebraska City for our April 1 outage. And that will get the plant back to its original configuration from what we have seen historically. What I don't have a picture for, but I think what's also important is that the MTP line was certainly energized over the last month. And I don't have pictures for that, but there's a great video on the wire that really steps through the value and the nature of that project that I think is pretty important, which essentially ties our generation together in the region, provides a south entrance for energy and for us to be able to move energy and receive energy across the region, improves reliability as well. So that's a great project. On the next slide is, we have learned some things over the course of time. And so we are currently going to be engaging our solar team that we have internally. And we're currently in the process of refining that stakeholder process. I think, what we've learned over the course of the last stakeholder processes is very similar to what we did on rate 261, where we went ahead and engaged prospective and current customers in what would be the appropriate way to design a rate that would give them the greatest value and also OPPD the greatest value. So we're in the process of defining that and refining that stakeholder outreach plan. And the intent of this is to bring solar advocates, folks that have seen different experiences within Nebraska and outside of Nebraska, across into a team to help us begin to develop what that community solar initiative might look like. And so that's the feedback that we heard from our most recent integrated resource plan process. And then from that, we'll begin to craft what that solar, community solar initiative may look like. Our team will begin to continue its process to look at a variety of different development options, potential locations that match with our kind of physical needs, potential rate structures that we've seen in the industry that we can share with the stakeholder outreach group that we're going to be engaging with, and then what that plan may look like going forward. So our plan is we've seen some initial timelines, but we really want to begin to do this stakeholder outreach probably within the next 30 or 45 days, because we really would like to be in a position to have an initiative in place that makes sense for our customers who have a desire for solar as an alternative, but also give us the opportunity to make it beneficial for all other customers as well. So we are currently in that process to look at that and obviously engage that stakeholder process and then come back to the board with the findings that we have for that. So we'll be doing that over the next several months and bring that back to the board around the first quarter timeframe. Next is around safety, and you can kind of flip through a couple slides here. This first one is on kind of DART cases and the number of DART cases. So, we have 2,300 employees. Obviously, we had 10 DART cases, and DART cases are days away, restricted, and transferred. It's employees that get injured on the job that have some impact, whether they have to stay home, they could be in the hospital, they could just be restricted light duty and whatever that may be, or we transfer them to a job because of that injury. So I would say if you go back to 2009, our DART cases were in the 50+ range. And you see significant improvement in that to 10 in 2016. And this has been the safest year OPPD has had in its 70-year history, and it's because of the focus of our men and women that are in the field, the support of the leadership team, the frontline supervisors, our corporate safety team, the leadership team that sits in front of me here to focus in on safety. And we see that where our corporate scorecard identifies a DART rate of less than 0.50, and obviously in 2016, we were at 0.49. And so that's pretty remarkable, but I think it speaks to the engagement of our men and women in the organization around just continually improving, and we're seeing it here. On the preventable vehicle accidents, we really have done significant amount of work around that, and obviously you can see just in 2013 where we had 36 preventable vehicle accidents, and in 2016 we had 9. Pretty significant changes that we've seen around on-property and public right-of-way. So we continually focus in on that kind of human performance behavior. Going to the generation side, primarily focused on renewable energy contributed to 17.2% of our retail energy sales in 2016. The wind capacity factor for December was 51.4%. Year to date, renewable energy contributed to 16% of our retail sales. Again, this is typically the highest capacity factor time of the year, typically the shoulder months of fall and spring, and then obviously during the heat of the summer, we typically see that capacity factor reduce. But year to date, it was 45.8%, which is pretty significant. And obviously, as we've talked to the board today, we'll be adding an additional 400 megawatts mid-year in 2017. And so that'll be important for us to see how that impacts both our percentage sales and our capacity factor. And from an OPPD team side, the folks that attended the committee meeting saw one of our employees, our young professionals, who was identified as our 2016 Young Professional of the Year, present on some of the nuclear fuel strategy that we have. But Janae Reese is a senior procurement engineer in facilities and material management. She was also very significantly involved in our strategic sourcing cost and process improvement initiative, which Tim McElreevy is here, who is our director of strategic sourcing. We're doing some pretty significant things there to reduce cost and to get better purchasing contracts and relationships. So she's done significant work, and that's why she was recognized as our 2016 Young Professional of the Year. And I gave her a little hard time about smiling, because when she's negotiating, she doesn't smile a lot, I can assure you that. But she cracked a good smile today. And then from the other OPPD team perspective, not only do we fully participate in the United Way, which we had a great participation, over $280-some thousand from the OPPD family in 2016, but another example is at our ongoing commitment for Toys for Tots. But I would say this is just an example where we collected over 30 boxes of toys across our service territory. But in certain areas of our company, we also did a variety of other fundraising and the month of giving that we had in December to support across the community, whether it would be shelters or homeless shelters or abuse shelters, or whether that would be in our South rural area. They did a fundraiser for a family who had a young child who was suffering from significant illnesses, that they raised money to support that. So, the OPPD family does a great job of supporting our communities, and these are just examples of their support that I thought I would share this month. So with that, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Tim.